On today's episode of Man Vs Marriage, we got some crap to figure out. That's about the best way I could put it.
The podcast. How good do you want your life to be?
You gotta live on purpose, for a purpose.
It's truly about becoming the best version of yourself that's possible. This is Man vs. Marriage, the podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of Man vs. Marriage. We're so happy that you have joined us. And it is I, the Q, Digga the Dog, in the studio with my beautiful wife, Jeannie Moran. Jeannie, please say what's up.
What's up?
Yeah. So now that we got that underway, we want to tell you how to contact us, and you can email us at coach@manvsmarriagepodcast.com. coach@manvsmarriagepodcast.com, and join us on Facebook for the fun at MVSM Podcast. And that's where you can reach out, connect to us, and we can start building some kind of a meaningful relationship together to take your relationship wherever you want it to go. All right, honey. So trying to figure out this show situation. There's so many things that are running through my head. I want to start this little mini episode or minisode series that's really centered around figuring out what I did in the beginning to make all this possible. Because we've done a bunch of shows, well over 50 shows now, and I gave tips in the beginning, and then we shared part of our journey, some wins, some losses, but I'm really interested. It just dawned on me, I need to know what I did in the beginning to turn some things around for us because we were in a tough spot. I don't know what to call this show. I just know that I want to get some perspective from you on what it is I'm looking for, if I can figure that out. And I guess the first thing I want to ask you is, from a woman's perspective, what does a woman look at when she's kind of trying to gauge her marriage, whether it's a positive and negative, it's good, it's bad, it's surviving, where she is? Can you give us some insight on that?
I was mainly focused on your reaction or your responses to me. Were you avoiding me? Were you wanting to spend time with me? Were you touching me at all? Obviously the sex life is a huge factor. That's pretty much it, I think, in the beginning. And we just kind of went from there.
Okay. So just listening to you, and I know that every woman's not the same, but you're my woman. So we'll focus on that. And then guys, you got to know, you have to seek to understand or learn who your woman is. So just take our journey for an example.
Well, there's a difference in how you look at things here. I'm not saying, you weren't talking to me at all. Obviously, if you're not talking to your wife, you have an issue. But things at that time when they weren't going so hot, we were just in passing conversation. It was, about the kids, about money. You okay? Yeah, I'm good. You good? Yeah, we're good. Okay. And that was pretty much it. If it's stale, if it's not actual conversation, same with touching. You could sit on the couch and hold my hand or touch my arm, but that's not quite the same as when we're cuddled on the couch, actually, engaged with each other and things like that. So it depends on her and what she likes. Obviously, you need to know those things. If you don't, you need to figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's where we were.
That makes perfect sense. So what would have been good for me is to kind of find out during that, even when we were going through hard times, kind of like Coach Rita taught us, what does a good marriage look like to you? I don't know why I never thought of that. And then I needed to look at, what does a good marriage look like to me? Because I figured at that time my role was about providing. The man is the provider, and that's why I ranked us at a 7. because I was doing my best to provide, as far as the finances went, we were struggling underwater. That's why I wasn't a 10, because, all of our needs were not met necessarily. And you were looking at it more of an emotional and physical, like,
Provision.
connection standpoint. And I was not around very much because I was always out chasing the next dollar to make, which I thought was the right thing. But it was more, that wasn't how you were looking at it.
No.
So
at the time, I needed a lot more than just knowing the bills were going to be paid.
Yeah. And I remember my initial reaction when you were having your ultrasound and for your second pregnancy. I had Hunter. I was holding Hunter. We had a bet going on that it was
Twins.
Twins. What did I say? It wasn't twins. You said it was, or was it in the reverse?
I said it was twins. You said no, it wasn't, because everybody had told you you're always bigger with your second pregnancy.
Okay. And then, so we told this person doing the ultrasound that we had a bet going on, and she was like, well, it's not twins. And I was like, winner. And she said it's triplets. And at that point, I felt weak. Like, literally. Yeah. I'm pretty starchy white anyway as far as my pigment, but I'm certain that I went 50 shades of white.
You're right.
So in that case, that my first thought, I thank God for life, period. But I remember distinctly my first thought is, how am I ever going to provide for 4 kids when I'm struggling so hard to provide for one? And I think, my need for positive affirmation that I was not receiving at the house, and my desire to provide for the family drove me outside of the home to really try and accomplish something big so that eventually our financial needs would be met, when more important than the financial needs being met was that I was actually present, and you needed me, the person there, to connect with you emotionally, physically, and to support you because of all the mayhem that was going on in our life at that time. It was no easy thing.
No, and I think the pattern that we had, which I'm sure everybody has, is my need wasn't being met emotionally, and there wasn't enough connection for me. There wasn't enough support for me. So your need of being affirmed in what you were doing was not being met, which just kind of compiled what we had going on. We had a lot of years in the beginning, and I think a lot of people do this because you're young and you're married, and people around you have been married longer than you, so you automatically take what's given as advice, and some is done in good nature. I appreciated it at the time. Looking back, I wish I would have had more. I just wish I would have had more guts to say, yeah, I should probably not listen to this or that. But it wasn't just the 4 kids. It was the outside voices that were telling us what we should and shouldn't do. There were outside voices telling me what you should be doing and how you should be doing. And others, I'm sure, that were talking to you about how it was our fault that this happened. And, we had a lot of stuff coming against us. So we really didn't take the time to sort through all of that. We just kind of shoved it all in a closet and mowed through our day. Yeah. And then you compile putting me in the hospital for so long, and what that did to my mood and my demeanor, and every day was different. One day we would be doing great, and the next day we're on edge on whether or not we're going into the OR. So there was a lot compiling in those first few years. Yeah. And I don't think we both knew each other well enough to know the signs of, it's one thing when you're snarky with somebody and you have an attitude. Yeah, okay, I definitely know there's something wrong with you today. But it's another thing to know your spouse so well that you could just look across the room and you could be smiling and happy with everybody else and having a great time. I will know when something's off. But it took us taking the time to really get to know each other well enough to figure out, no, something's definitely not okay here. We didn't do that in the beginning. So it was just kind of whatever you gave me is what I took.
Yeah.
And I think that just compiled over years, because once we finally started digging and figuring each other out, learning who the other person is, when you first get married, and this may sound like I'm a hypocrite because this is not what we did, but I would suggest taking the first 2 years at least just to get on your own 2 feet. I'm not saying ignore your family, but you got to kind of put them on the back burner a little.
Yeah.
And spend some time figuring yourselves out, because moving in with somebody for the first time is not easy. Learning somebody's habits. My habits drive you crazy. For the first year in that apartment, you wanted to choke me. And I understand that. But at the same time, we never discussed it. We just said, okay, we're married, we're moving in. Mm-hmm. There was never any, look, seeing paper stacked on a desk makes your eyes twitch. Mm-hmm. Had I not seen it for myself, I would have never known. For me, I can pile bills in a corner on the table and leave them there, and it doesn't bother me. As long as it's paid, I really don't care. Eventually, it all goes in the trash anyway. But that's not how Quincy works. Quincy can't do stacks of anything anywhere. But we didn't know those things.
Right.
That was a huge problem, I think, is we just went with who we were when we were dating and just assumed that person was going to be just perfect when we moved in together and everything was going to mesh, and it just didn't. And then we had Hunter a year later. We were pregnant, and that just shifted everything. Yeah. And you add a year and a half later, and we've got triplets coming, and that just blew everything out of the water.
Yeah. And what I'm looking at for us guys is the thing I had to say was, what the heck did I do when we were in such a really tough place that kind of gave us some hope that our marriage had a chance? Because it could have ended. It could have just ended if we didn't if we didn't come together and decide to work this thing out. And so, I had asked you, questions about what did I do? And, what you said to me, and then I kind of just wrote it down, was I took the time to see you as a person, not just as my wife or as a mom, but I took time to see you, Jeannie.
You started paying attention.
Yeah.
There's a huge difference between coming home and seeing me doing the dishes, making dinner, running through my daily routine, and coming in, stopping what I'm doing, giving me a hug, saying hello, and gauging, how am I actually? Where can you help? What can you do? I mean, the difference for me when you come home now, when you wrap your arms around me just to let me know you're home, I instantly relax. It's just a natural response now. Back then, I was always tense. I was always on edge. I was always frustrated because there was just so much going on. And when you got home, I didn't relax. I went to checkout mode because there's another adult in the house. I'm done.
And I do remember that. And I always wanted to be that husband whose touch could, change the mood. Not just sexually, although I'm, always trying to up my game there, or be the kind of dad that would bring peace, or comfort to my kids. But I know very much during that time, whenever I would come home, it was like the litany of all the things the kids did wrong, and then you were bailing. Mm-hmm. But that's all you could do because you were under so much duress, with autism and kids, and finding out what you needed is what helped me make the change because I became intentional about that, you
Well,
know?
see, and that's where the switch is for me. When you started asking me what I needed, I had to actually take time to think about, what do I need him to do? Because my first response is just handle the kids.
Yeah.
Just take the load from me. But that wasn't really what I needed. To some degree, yes. But what I really needed was to be seen as myself
Mm-hmm.
and as your wife, and not as the mom, the maid, the taxi driver, all these other hats that I'm wearing throughout the day. And when we finally sat down and went, okay, what is it that you need to happen? And there were some nights I didn't know, but you would come home and say, you know what, you're kind of stressed. Why don't you let me handle this? You go take a bath, go relax for a little bit, reset, and we'll start again. You were noticing things about myself that I wasn't catching.
Yeah.
You know, that is huge. I think the main difference was we became aware.
I think so,
Awareness is
too.
the biggest thing in anything that you do for yourself, for your spouse, for your kids. If you're aware of what's right and what's not, then you know how to gauge and how to react.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of times I may not notice I'm in a funky mood. Something may have spun me and I just didn't catch it, and I roll with it. You usually catch that before I do in a lot of situations, especially if our day is crazy and we've got a lot going on.
Yeah.
But as far as what created the hope, or how did you know we had hope, you created it.
I created the hope.
You gave me something to look forward to. Something was changing. Even if it was as simple as just coming in and stopping me from making dinner long enough. Because now you come in and you hold me when you come in from work, you come in, you put your arms around me and you hold me while I'm making dinner. You don't let go until my body relaxes.
Mm-hmm.
That's a difference. It used to just be come in and give me a hug and a kiss and move on. It's holding out until something changes, I think, is what it really was.
That's a good word. I love that.
Even in conversation, constantly asking questions. You know, I fight questions depending on what they are.
No, not like yesterday.
But shut it. But there are times when you just either change the way you're asking it, or you explain it and re-ask it until we get to a point where either this is just not going anywhere right now and we need to table it, or something shifts and the tone changes and the attitude changes. Like, okay, now I get it. We can go somewhere. The hope is created. It's not something you can look at somebody and go, yeah, there's a little bit there. I think the hope has to be created. You have to be willing to do something and keep doing something until it changes.
That is great. We're going to have to wrap this episode up here pretty quick, because otherwise we'll get into it and we won't be calling them minisodes anymore. It'll just be a full-on Man Vs Marriage episode. I want to give you some advice, buddy. Yeah, you, that handsome stud that you're looking at in the rear view, or you're at the gym pumping iron, getting down on the wave, just getting it done like a beast. Anyway, I want to give you some advice, okay? I'm going to ask you to take your wife to dinner. But what I would like is if you could ask her, maybe on the way to dinner, to listen to this episode with you. Listen to this episode together. And maybe at dinner, you can put your phones away. And you can start to ask the questions. What did you think? What were your hopes and dreams for our marriage when this thing got started? And then you can kind of refer to mine and Jeannie's experience. And then you can get on the path to creating hope. Even if your marriage is good, like our marriage is great right now, but we still have room to grow. And we're constantly evolving as people. And we need to stay on top of that and be intentional. And I couldn't have said it any better than Jeannie did. And I'm glad that that's kind of recognized. I created hope. And you can do the same, dude. You really can. So yeah, get on it. That's your homework from the Q Dog. Go create some hope. Ask your wife about her marriage, her desires. Share yours, what you wanted your marriage to be, what it was going to look like. And then, dang it, get out there and get it done. Go create some hope for yourself. Ask the questions. Listen. Put the phone away. That's my best advice for this episode. And until the next one, make sure that you reach out to us and let us know your successes or your failures. Don't try it once and give up. You got to be in it for the long haul. Until the next episode, this is the Q, Diggity Dog, and we are out.
The podcast.
How good do you want your life to be?
It's truly about becoming the best version of yourself that's possible.
This is Man vs. Marriage.
The podcast.